Hi guys, well, good evening, and you're all very welcome to the third of the Oyster webinar series for the Oyster World Rally. My name's Paul. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Oyster Yachts, and more importantly for this webinar, I was fortunate enough to be the skipper of the first Oyster 885 and sailed around the world in the Oyster World Rally. So this evening we're going to be looking at the Galapagos, and let me tell you, the Galapagos is an amazing place. So we've got lots of great content to share with you guys this evening. Well, first of all, we literally have hundreds of people in the room. So just what you'll see over on the right-hand side, I think most of you have found it, there's a chat box. So just introduce yourselves and tell us where you are. I'm sitting here in Southampton in our build yard here. And literally right just over there from me, there's a number of Oyster 745s and 885s being built as we speak, who are getting ready to then go off and be launched and go and sail to far-flung places as all our yachts do. Good to see some of you, lots of people I know. Good to see you, Ivan. Good to see you, Liam. Good to see you, Jürgen, Lester, Boyd, good to see you. Patrick, fantastic. Good to see you, Anne, from Newport in the west of Ireland. Excellent. Okay, well, I'm not alone. I also have a team here with me too. And the first people that I would like to introduce are our guest speakers this evening. And this family, and it's a family we have this evening with us, sailed around the world and are all circumnavigators who did the last Oyster World Rally in 2017 to 2019. So we've got David, Linda and Tom. So David, Linda and Tom, if you can pop your camera on and unmute and say hello, that would be fantastic. There we are. Hi guys.
Hi everybody. Hi there.
Welcome. So some of you may well know David, Linda and Tom. So they owned the yacht Sea Flute and Oyster 56 and took her around the world, as I said, in the second Oyster World Rally, and then promptly went and won the Oyster Regatta straight after in Antigua. So fair play to those guys. But not only have we got these guys, we've also got Ali Smith here. So Ali, who is running the World Rally, and Millie is here with us too. Where's
Hi
Millie?
everyone.
There's Millie, and we have Eddie Scoogle as well. So we've got the full team here. So what we're going to do, we're going to go into a content piece about the Galapagos in a minute. And then after that, we're going to spend a bit of time with David, Linda and Tom and talk about their experience when they took Sea Flute around the world. And then after that, we're then going to all come on the screen and we're here for a Q&A as a panel for you to ask whatever questions you want. So in the chat box, just pop your questions there and we will tag them and we will get round to them. All right, fantastic. Right, so we're all going to turn our cameras off and into mute, and I'm going to stay on, and we'll go into the webinar. So, the Galapagos Islands. Okay, so the first thing is you've obviously got a sail there, and you're going to start over towards Panama. The trip from Panama out to the Galapagos is about 900 nautical miles or thereabouts. And effectively, it takes around about 5 days to make your way out and down to the Galapagos here. Now, what's interesting about the Galapagos is if we look at actually the weather patterns, is if you see here, there's a few things at play. Well, the first thing is you'll see that there's a current that comes down. This is the Panama current, so clearly it's going to help us if we sail in there. Also, as well, what you'll see here, pushing up from the south, you've got the Peru Oceanic Current. Now, this is also known as the Humboldt Current. It starts down in Antarctica and it literally makes its way up South America, up to the Galapagos. And then this turns into the South Equatorial Current that then runs over the surface that you would then use then to head west from there. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand you over to Eddie, who is going to talk a little bit more about that dash line that's called the ITCZ, or Intertropical Convergence Zone. So, Eddie, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great.
Right, the ITCZ, Intertropical Conversion Zone,
isn't a fixed entity. It kind of moves around. And just here, you can see it. This is a website called windy.com, a very useful tool. So you can see it here fairly fairly well defined across the sort of north of the equatorial region. So it doesn't run directly across the equator. It behaves a little like a ribbon in a slow-moving stream. It kind of meanders up and down. And by the time we leave or you guys leave to go to the Galapagos from Panama, it could be in a completely different place. But we can see today, this is what the wind looks like in the Gulf of Panama. And we've got a spot, 2 knots of wind there from
not a lot of breeze.
Not a lot of breeze. So it might be best to wait, especially since the wind further out is not exactly going the way you want it to. There's another useful tool in this as well. You can use, let's see, gosh, I've lost it.
No problem, Eddie. No problem.
Bear with me a second.
No problem. So effectively, this tool, it's an online tool, and we can use it for weather, oceanic currents, waves, clouds, all the meteorology, and we can also use it for routing too.
Menu. Sorry, I just got the wrong menu up.
No problem.
Distance and planning. I beg your pardon. Sorry for that. Right. So if you want to know what the weather's going to look like along your route, we can just pop in some waypoints here. Maybe one in the middle of Las Perlas, strong tidal currents there. I'll put one here because it's not a good idea to cut that corner. And we'll zoom out to, we'll say San Cristobal in the Galapagos just to make it easy. Now you see another band has appeared along the bottom here, and you can select boat. So then this now gives you the what the weather will be like along your route and roughly how long it will take you to get there. Then what you have to do first, just down here, is enter your speed. I don't know if you can see that. Enter your average speed. So this then tells you if I left now from Panama, this is when I would get there. And this is what the weather would look like. You can see the main chart, how the weather changes on the chart. And you can see just up here, if I go back again, you can see the boat moving up and down the line. So it's giving you a kind of rough idea about what the weather is going to be doing along your route if, for example, you left today. Okay, so let's hope the weather's going to be better, or the wind's going to be in a more favorable direction. Okay, so that's quite a useful tool. Another thing you want to take account of here is if you go across to the menu on the right, you can see Oceanic Currents. Okay, now up here you see the equatorial countercurrent coming in the opposite direction. Okay, and this is the southerly equatorial current going westwards. So this is the one you want to be in when you're going from the Galapagos here down to the Marquesas down here. Okay, so if we just do a spot on that, we can just see it's doing about 2.1 knots there. So maybe how long would you ride that along here before you drop down, or would you just drop down here, slower speed? It's up to whatever's happening on the day. My first circumnavigation, the ITCZ, the tropical conversion zone, was right over the Galapagos. So we had to actually motor a fair bit south. We had to motor about 200 miles south to pick up the westerlies, and then just turned west and then shot along here, instead of just driving along a ribbon in empty wind.
Yeah, and just on that, Eddie, if you just put your cursor just in the blue between the green, just south of the Galapagos, you see where it's blue. If you zoom in there, I can very clearly remember that when we left the Galapagos on Lush, we probably motored for about 2 or 3 days to actually cross that light area to the south. And the weather literally changed overnight from having almost like a northeasterly trade down into a southeasterly trade. And you had basically like a 24 hours of really mixed weather, some thunder and lightning, and the next thing then you jibe the boat southeasterly, 15 knots, and all the way across the Marquesas. So it's quite interesting. But what's really interesting, especially if you're watching the webinar now, is that all of this, in terms of this information, all of this is available to you. And with the systems on board the boats, you can download this and you can look at the weather live. So it's a really handy tool to
Yeah,
have.
you can actually see what's happening quite far away, because I just switched on down here. You can switch on. You see the you can switch on reported winds. These are the actual winds that are being recorded at these points. Now, if you look carefully on the chart, you can probably see these little dots. These are oceanic buoys. So if you zoom in a wee bit further, you can see suddenly weather pops up. So you can have a look and see what's happening at that buoy, and you can get a past record of what actually happened at the buoy. And you'll see that they're actually all across the Pacific Ocean. So if you've any doubt of what's actually happening there, well, there's a few more here. Just zoom in slightly. There we go. Ping on that one. And then the weather past and up to the present. There's no forecast here, but up to the present, you can do that. If you want a forecast, drop that out, pick a spot near it, and then the arrow, and then you get the metrogram down here. So that's a really useful tool. We don't have to spend much more time on it now, but it's windy.com. You can subscribe. It's free. This version is free, I think, but you can subscribe and get a better service. And I use this quite a lot for all sorts of other things, like personal boating and flying and stuff like that as well. So it's very useful. So back to you, Paul.
Brilliant, fantastic. So if you could just stop sharing your screen there, Eddie, fantastic. Okay, so on your way to the Galapagos, well, you're going to end up crossing the equator. Now, this is the picture of the chart plotter of Lush, and as you can see here, we were literally just 0.008 over the equator here. Now, if you know about crossing the equator and you're a mariner, well, then you'll know that there's actually a ceremony that actually has to go on when you cross the equator. And the ceremony is that if you haven't crossed the equator before, you are known as a polywog. And as you cross, you become a shellback. But for you to become a shellback, you've actually got to go through a few challenges. Now, this is Joe and Lucy here. Joe, I believe, is even on the webinar, so he's probably just got the land of his life to look at himself here. And we were literally, these guys were getting ready to make the sacred journey to become shellbacks. So then the question becomes, well, how do you become a shellback? Well, the first thing is you need King Neptune and the high priestess Aphrodite to come down and put you in the courtroom and just check that you are of suitable experience as a mariner to cross the equator. You also need a bit of help from the chef, and the chef basically goes below and finds all the fish guts and all the nasty stuff and all the gone off food in the galley that you might want to mix together to then pass judgment on your willing crew members. As you can see here, they go through quite a tough time, but actually once they emerge out of the other side, then they've made that journey and they've become the shellbacks on your way to the Galapagos. Now, once you cross the equator and you make your way towards the Galapagos, what's quite amazing is when you arrive there, it's pretty apparent that it's a volcanic archipelago, and it was discovered in 1535. It's made up of 19 islands, and most of these islands were formed between 3 and 5 million years ago. Isabella, over here, this is Isabella. This is the youngest island. She was actually made up of 6 volcanoes that effectively joined together, which made the whole island. Now, what you'll see over here is these are new ones. These are new things. At some point, these will become islands too. And the whole thing sits on a tectonic plate called the Nasra Plate. And this moves from the west to the east, which basically means that that the islands are born on this side and the older islands are over on this side here. Now, the islands themselves, they actually they got their name off these guys, off the turtles, and they were named Insula de los Galapagos, which basically just means island of the turtles. Now, speaking of turtles, Eddie, do you want to tell us what's going on in this image here? Eddie, I think you might be on mute there. Oh, I think he might have even lost him. Okay, well,
No,
we'll.
I'm back.
Oh,
Sorry,
you're back.
I
Great,
just
great.
opened the box that was covering the control.
No
Sorry about
problem.
that. Yeah, so that was quite an amusing day out. That was to a turtle sanctuary on Santa Cruz that the agent took us to. It was really funny, and he said, "Well, clearly they had this empty shell. I didn't ask anybody to leave. There was an empty shell, and they said, "Do you want to get in it?" So yeah, it's big enough to get in. So if you know me, you'll really understand how big these creatures can grow. Um, so I hope you find it.
Absolutely.
Sorry, it's kind of evolution in the before your very eyes there. But
Fantastic. And actually, anybody that I've showed this image to, they've all gone, how on earth did he get out of that? So, how did you get out of that, Eddie?
it wasn't easy. It almost needed a corkscrew, mate. I tell you.
Oh, I'd say so. It looks like it. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so moving on, of course, you might know that the islands are obviously famous, or were definitely made famous by this chap. This is Charles Darwin, and he visited for 5 weeks aboard HMS Beagle back in 1835. Now, he was only 26 years old, but whilst he was wandering around the islands, he started to notice differences between species on the islands. Now, you may have heard of the Darwin finches, and here they are, and here's some of the original drawings that he made. And the thing to notice is that really what he noticed was actually the finches all arrived in from America at some point. They got out there, but notice how all the beaks are slightly different. And if we look at the next slide, you'll see that actually this is due to evolution and due to actually what they were eating. And over a period of time, then their beaks changed. So he really started to notice that. And of course, with the Galapagos, if you think of the islands, because the islands are individual and they start life as literally a volcano and then they start moving west to east on the tectonic plate, is that as they begin to age and basically life begins to colonize the island from literally a volcanic desolated place, and then life begins to come in, it means that each individual island is its own ecosystem in itself, which is what allowed these finches to effectively evolve. And he started to notice the differences. Now, it's not just the finches, it's also the tortoises, the giant tortoises here. And you'll see the guy on the left has got like a saddleback and the guy on the right doesn't. And that really comes down to the fact that the guy on the left lives on an island where he's got to reach up to eat the vegetation off the tree. And the guy on the right, effectively, he can eat, as you can see, he's in a grass vegetation. So all his food was on the ground. So he started to observe this. And that's after that, he wrote probably, the famous book, The Origin of Species. Now, of course, we're here to talk about cruising around the Galapagos. So that was just a little bit of history for you there. So, Eddie, so tell us about the three options then for visiting yachts when you arrive.
Well, there are three options. You can arrive with no autographo at all, as long as you have less than 10 people aboard, and you must go to Puerto Ayora and Santa Cruz and nowhere else. You're allowed to stay for up to 20 days and take local boats cruises, but you have to pay the local park fees, and there's a whole myriad of different kinds of fees that you've got to pay. Even when you arrive there, actually arriving by boat with the rally is the easiest. When you arrive by plane, it's just when you think you've paid all the fees in Quito or wherever, you've got a whole lot more to pay when you arrive. Anyway, so method 2 is with the autograph and permit, which must be applied for 3 months in advance to the agent, which the support team will take care of for you. You must clear into Puerto Banqueros on San Cristobal first. That's the island to the west. You cannot free cruise in between. You must route directly to each place. You can, of course, take up local cruises and stuff like that, and once you've paid all the park fees and all the rest of it. Number 3 is the one that Paul did actually on Lush. You autograph with the permits, the 3 months in advance. You then have to apply for an itinerary, with which you can go more or less free cruising, but you have to apply for the itinerary. It has to be approved. You need to have a park guide on board. You're allowed to stay up for up to 30 days, but you must have a park agent on board as well, a park guide, who you have to pay by yourself. And then at the time of this writing, you also had to pay $200 per day per person for people on board. Now, this might not be such a great. This sounds great. Free cruising in the Galapagos. How much better can it get? But if you're a family boat, that means you're going to have to travel overnight. So you'll be pretty tired in the daytime when you arrive, and you want to go and see around. So family boats, small family boats with no professional crews might be better just rocking up in Puerto Ayora and booking the organised cruises. So Paul, back to you.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Eddie. Well, I can remember very clearly arriving into San Cristobal, and this is where you come into here. That's where you check in and you make your way down the western side of San Cristobal here. Now, the port is really interesting, and the best way I can describe it is that, and it's like a lot of places in the Galapagos, which is that effectively the humans moved in, but the sea lions never moved out. Now, as you can see here, this is the Oyster World Rally office here. This is the new recruit. And everywhere you go, you will see there's sea lions everywhere you go. And we kind of always made a bit of a joke that when you first kind of arrive in there, and we arrived quite early in the morning, is that actually you arrive in and all the sea lions are literally chilling on the park benches like this, and it looks like they've all been out on some massive night out on the town, and actually they've just kind of just literally recovering on the park benches, and they're quite friendly, as you can see them on the back of an oyster there. So yeah, it's good fun. And I think, one of the most amazing things about the Galapagos, so talking about it, is actually when you get there, you really are on your own. Now, as Eddie said, we were lucky enough to take a private guide and we cruised around. But just something that to get across to you is actually the wildlife there don't see us as a threat. So you really get up close and personal with them. Now, there's amazing anchorages with huge diversity and variety. And I've put this slide up here for you to see, because I very clearly remember this anchorage for many reasons. But one of them was where Lush was anchored there wasn't another human being for about 90 miles around. We were literally just on our own, and it was absolutely incredible. Now, I say we were on our own, but then there was loads of these guys. These are the blue-footed boobies. The time of year that we went was the mating season, so the guy is on the left and the girl is on the right, and the guy is trying to impress the girl, and the girl's like, maybe, we'll see. But then hopefully things move on and they get little babies out of that. And you can see this is a frigate bird here, a male frigate bird. They blow the red sac up like this, and they go all over the islands, and you'll see them. And that is when the females fly overhead, they literally pick the male by the colour or the redness of how they look there effectively. Here you'll see a cute little baby in his nest. Also, you'll meet these guys, dragons, the marine iguanas, which are unique to the Galapagos. Here's, again, shows you the variety of life ashore. You've got the heron, the iguana, the crabs, the sea lions. The penguins, you think the last place on earth you'll see penguins, you see them in the Galapagos. Now, these are the Humboldt penguin, and they're named after the current. Now, the reason they can go there is think about the current, the Humboldt current. It comes all the way up from Antarctica, so it's cold enough for penguins. And it also, that deep ocean current brings a huge amount of food to the Galapagos, so it allows a huge variety of life. But that is not just above the surface. Below the surface, there's also amazing experiences to have as well. And as you can see, this dive here, meeting the turtle, was pretty special. There's also some predators out there. These are white-tip reef sharks here, completely harmless. You'll also find schooling hammerheads as well. in the Galapagos, which is amazing to see. This is the Galapagos Shark, a cousin of the great white shark. We saw plenty of these, and I'll always remember, and I was going to put it on tonight for you, but it wasn't going to work because it was just too dark. But we had this breathtaking experience on Lush where we were anchored at night. We had the underwater lights on, and we literally watched this show of Galapagos shark chasing sea lion chasing flying fish, all going on around the boat. And it was amazing to see how nimble the sea lions are and how the sharks have to work from the element of surprise to actually catch their prey. Because the sea lion was literally just swimming over the top of the Galapagos shark, and the shark would try and move, but it's not as quick as the sea lion. And it was just incredible to watch the kind of food chain in action, as it were. Here are the sea lions, they're everywhere. When you snorkel in the water, and something is that even if you don't dive, you can have the most amazing experiences in the first 5 meters of water. And there was one anchorage we went to which was called Chinaman's Hat. And effectively, we went out at dawn and we did this snorkel in just 3.5 meters of water. And the life was incredible in terms of huge schools of fish all around you. Next thing, something's tugging on your flipper. You look back and you see it's a baby sea lion saying, "Come on, let's play, let's play." You turn around and then swim past Dad, who's like the size of you. And then next thing, a Galapagos penguin goes past you. So you really will have the most breathtaking experiences in the Galapagos with the wildlife. You'll also see some of the famous shots you may have seen on various different wildlife documentaries. This is a famous one on the Galapagos. You can see the volcanic scene. You literally pick up a mooring, which is just down there. If I just turn out, just literally down here, there's a load of more moorings, and you can pick a buoy up there, and then you'd literally go for a walk on the coast, which is quite amazing. This is Kicker Rock here. That's off the island of San Cristobal. And also, again, look at this. This actually is the Chinaman's Hat. This was very, very close to where we did our snorkel that morning. Now, of course, how can I possibly articulate really what it's like? So before we move into the next bit, which we're going to speak to David, Linda, and Tom about their experience at the Galapagos. Tom Pedley, who I'm about to introduce you to, I met Tom down in New Zealand about a year and a half ago. And I was speaking to some of the rally fleet there, and they said, "Oh, Paul," they said, you have to go and speak to Tom and look at some of Tom's videos. They're amazing." And I always remember the first video that Tom did, which I saw, and I got back to the UK, and the first thing we did was we shared it on our social media feeds because it was just incredible. Well, Tom very kindly put together this little video now, which I'm going to share with you all, which I'm sure will inspire you. So I'm going to go on mute and let's put the video on. Okay, guys. Sorry, I think we're having a few technical issues. Now I'm gonna try the video one more time. If it doesn't work, we'll just move on, and we will send you the link. So apologies for that. It's one thing I can't seem to control is the platform. So let's try again. I can see in the chat box you can hit reconnect on the top there, and we will try again. So let's give it one more go. And if it doesn't work, we will just move on. Okay, guys, sorry about this. Sorry about this. We're having technical issues, obviously. Right, so I think probably the best thing to do is we will get that video to you somehow. Let's move on. So if I could invite David and Linda and Tom to the screen. This is Sea Flute here. And let's have a quick chat, if that's okay.
Good evening, Paul.
Hi, guys. How are you? So, listen, I mean, clearly we're trying to play Tom's video there, and we'll see what we can do to fix it before we go off air. Now, guys, you bought Sea Flute, you sailed off, and you circumnavigated the globe. So, you know, I guess the first question I've got for you guys is why did you decide to do the rally?
Well, I suppose turning the clock back, I've always been a keen sailor for my whole life, and we owned as a family an Oyster 435. So we were sort of in the Oyster family, and I was very aware of the first rally, which I watched with great interest and huge envy. And that was really, once the second rally was announced, that was the catalyst for me to really make the decision that I wanted to circumnavigate. And what a great way to do it in the company of other oysters. So my major challenge was obviously to convince Lindy that she would like to do it as well.
And so, Lindy, how on earth did you do that?
Well, he didn't really. It was Tom that convinced me to do it. I knew that Dave was going to do it anyway. For a start, I told him he needed a bigger boat. So that the search was on for a bigger boat. And then I was just going to fly into all the airports, all to the nice places around the world and just meet up with them. But Tom convinced me then.
Okay, fantastic. And so, because I can always remember you saying in Antigua last year, and you said, oh, you know, Paul, as a non-sailor, I'm so glad I did this. You know, it was such an amazing experience. And I was like, God, absolutely fantastic. So I guess what was the moment then that tipped you guys over the edge? So you went off, you found the boat, and you bought the boat specifically to do the rally, right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
So what tipped us? I mean, I was committed 100%. As I say, fortunately, we managed to win Lindy over, and so we signed up and we were ready to go. And I think certainly, again, benefit of hindsight, one of the best things that happened for us was the 12-month postponement, because by the time we committed, we needed to get a bigger boat. Obviously, the hunt for a boat always takes a while.
Sure.
So then we needed to refit Sea Flute for the trip. So obviously spent lots of time flying backwards and forwards to Palma, looking at various 56s. So we eventually found the perfect boat to refit. And then we had plenty of time, or I thought plenty of time, to refit and test everything out. And the 56 was my first choice. I previously crossed the Atlantic with a friend of mine on a 56. So I was absolutely certain it would be a great platform for us. Tom had also done half a circumnavigation on a 56, so he was very enthusiastic about that as the choice. And that was it, really. So we were pretty much set to go.
Fantastic. And my first experience, in fact, the first Oyster I skippered was a 56. So a beautiful boat. Really, really beautiful boat. So tell us then, what are your memories about the Galapagos? What was the special moments that you guys had out there?
Well, there were too many fabulous experiences to obviously run through now, but the wildlife is the main thing, and I mean, so it was one of the highlights for Lindy, and one of the things that the Galapagos are quite hard to get to by any means other than a boat, so it was an easy sell to get Lindy to definitely sail from Panama to the Galapagos. But once we were there, the place is just like nowhere else on Earth. It's absolutely spectacular. Do you want to talk about the highlights for you, Lindy?
Well, it was actually leaving Galapagos. It was I think it was half a day away. We were leaving the Galapagos to go to, because the sea around there is just full of wildlife. I think we were half a day away on our way to the Marquesas. And we were literally surrounded by about 30 pilot whales and about 15 sperm whales. And the pilot whales were actually coming up to Sea Flute and bumping along her side and looking up at us. It was just amazing, absolutely amazing.
Wow, it's amazing and it's so true that you get those moments out there with all the wildlife. You think, God, it just brings you right into the moment. You just appreciate the world that we live in. It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's for sure. And Tom, now obviously we've not seen your film yet, and we're going to try and fix that. But you're quite the photographer. So in terms of your videography, your photography, you must have had an absolute ball in the Galapagos, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it kind of makes it a bit easy for nature photography. Usually you're chasing stuff around, trying to get a few snaps here and there, but when you can walk within a few meters of most things there, it takes a bit of the challenge out of it, but it's absolutely incredible. And I mean, particularly the diving and snorkeling, like you said earlier, is just, I think it was probably the best on the trip, really. Is the sea life there is just insane. So,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is. It's just, and just as Lindy said, the ocean is literally teeming with wildlife everywhere. It's just incredible. And so, Tom, you were one of the younger people on the rally at the time.
Yeah.
So how was that? How did you get on with that?
Well, I guess before I went on the trip, I was a bit concerned I'd have to spend 2.5 years solely with my parents.
We'll ask that question next.
Well,
maybe not. We'll take that one offline.
You quickly realise there's lots of other crew. I think over the whole rally there were over 100 different crew. So there's always plenty of other people in the same sort of position. Most boats tend to have 1 or 2 crew with them. So there's plenty of places to escape to every now and again.
Okay. And tell us, did you ever get the curfew? Come on now, you need to be back on the boat by 10 o'clock.
Well, I guess you probably don't want to have too many beers before a long passage, but
that's true.
It does tend to happen.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And so maybe tell us about one of the dives you did in the Galapagos. Which is the most memorable that you did?
The best one we did was Gordon Rocks.
Okay.
A little bit, but we went from Santa Cruz, and it was a bit of a trip out. But that was an insane dive. There was just unbelievable amounts of sea life, sort of, like I said, just sharks everywhere, hammerhead sharks, Galapagos sharks, and probably the most sea life I've seen in one condensed area. pretty challenging diving, probably one of the hardest dives I've ever done, just because of all the currents. It's pretty wild ride. But I mean, if you're a reasonably experienced diver, it's definitely worth doing it.
It's a must do.
Yeah, for sure. And quite a few people dived at Kicker Rock as well and said that was equally as good.
Yeah, I can remember we snorkeled at Kicker Rock, and the guy said, you're going to see some sharks, and it'll be fine. So you kind of get in, and I don't know what it was like when you guys were there, but when we were there, it was really murky. And then, so I remember then he said, "It's okay, Paul." He said, "Just put your flippers on, your mask and your snorkel, get in, let the current carry you through, keep your eyes out, you'll see a load of sharks." So fast forward, and there, I remember lying there, and it's murky. You can probably see about that far. Next thing, all these fins start swimming past. Like, amazing experience for sure. Okay, fantastic. So maybe guys, tell us, what were your most memorable moments on board Sea Flute? There she is above you. So, you must have had some incredible experiences and special moments as a family.
Again, too many really to list, and it's really hard. Everybody asks the same. What was the best place you went? What was the best experience? Everyone likes to know the worst storm that you endured whilst you're away. But I think we've all got sort of slightly different favourites. I think certainly the night passages when you're on a lovely smooth sea in the Pacific, and you've just got this absolutely magnificent night sky, and you can hear the wildlife in the ocean around you. Really magical moments. For me, certainly one of my highlights was we were anchored off an island called Nui in the Pacific, and you obviously become very attuned to noises on the boat, and if something's slightly different, as a skipper or a sailor, you're immediately awake thinking, what on earth is that?
Sure.
Very early hours of the morning, I was awoken by a strange sound, and then I very quickly realised that what I was listening to was whale song resonating through the hull of the boat.
Wow, okay.
So I quickly nudged Lindy and said, "Wake up, listen to this." And of course, she thinks somebody's an intruder on the boat or something, and then just immediately realised is what we're listening to. And we just laid there for half an hour, and it was just magical, absolutely incredible. You must have some.
Well, I think my best, I've already said my best, was the whales around the boat just leaving Galapagos. And another time when I think it was on the long trip, wasn't it, from the Galapagos to the Marquesas. The water was like a mirror. We were gliding across the water, and yet all around us, rays were just leaping out of the water. Everywhere you looked, they were just leaping, thousands of them out of the water. That was incredible as well. Yeah. It's sort of the wildlife does it for me.
Yeah. I think one of the most amazing landfalls, obviously after 17 days from Galapagos to the Marquesas, any landfall would have been great, but arriving at Fatu Hiva and just sort of manoeuvring into that little anchorage, and the scenery there is just absolutely magical. As you know, it's almost like a scene out of a fairy tale book. It's just
Jurassic Park, I would say.
Just glorious.
Yeah.
So that will always be up there with me. The tropical island white sand beaches, I mean, they're all equally magical, but as you know, you see hundreds of those on the way around. But yeah, just too many great experiences to pick from, really.
Yeah, it's so true, and people ask us exactly the same. So tell me, what was the best place? What was the best moment? There is so many; it's really hard to pinpoint them. And you kind of go through the photos, you go through the videos, and then you're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe that we've done that." You pinch yourself like, "Oh, sailed around the world, but experience these amazing cultures, the people, the wildlife, the wine, the food, and everything that goes with it." So, guys, if there may be somebody watching the webinar now who is sitting on the fence and like, "Oh, I'm not sure whether to go for it. I'm not sure," what would you say to anybody who's sitting on the fence and not sure whether to go for it and do the Oyster World Rally?
I think it's got to be a question for Lindy. Because
Well,
Lindy.
from a non-sailor that I was, who really didn't want to do the rally, that was probably one of the best things that I've ever done in my life. And I would say, just don't hesitate. Just do it. Get on and do it. You won't regret it. It's absolutely fantastic.
Well, what an amazing endorsement, and something that you guys said. I remembered that you said that what you necessarily didn't realise, and I think that Hugh and Janice said it on the previous webinar, was that the friends you make for life on the rally as well
Absolutely.
is another great thing. So maybe tell us about the friendships that are formed.
Well, I think, as Hugh and Janice said, it was certainly something that we not properly considered. I knew we would make friends on the way round, but we've got this sort of enormous group now of lifelong friends all over the world, and there's probably very few places we could go to now where there's not somebody that we'd definitely be calling on. And we've got lots of trips planned over the next 12 months with various groups from different parts of the world. We've already had a couple of excursions as well with people. So that is just staggering how well that worked out.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And then, so what would be then the best piece of advice? Because I notice in the chat room here, I can see plenty of people. Some are going for the next rally in 2022. What would be the best piece of advice that you would give to them?
I think give yourself as much time as you possibly can for preparation. Not just the boat. I mean, the boat is important, that you prepare it as well as you possibly can. You carry, a very comprehensive inventory of spares, but you get things tested well before you go. I guess, like most of us, we were pretty much harbour queens before we did this. You tend to be hopping from marina to marina, and the serious systems like generators or water makers that you very rarely use. Obviously, these things, your life depends on them almost. So you need to make sure you're absolutely on top of those. You need to know how to maintain them. You need to know what essential spares you need to carry to look after them. But just use them, because I probably only used a water maker in anger half a dozen times before we went on the rally, and that's something that you really, really need to have working constantly. Obviously the inventory of charts, courtesy flags, all of those things that you don't normally think about too much is a pretty
takes a long
big
time.
undertaking. I mean, for anybody who's considering the rally that hasn't already got a boat, there are some boats I know on your brokerage site that have just completed the circumnavigation that are pretty much turnkey, ready to go. They'll have all of the charts, all of the spares, all of the medical kit. So, yeah, definitely worth a first look there.
Yeah, absolutely agree completely. And so, what maybe experience or things did you learn on the rally that you didn't expect to learn and were quite surprising?
I think, certainly the dynamic as a family was fabulous. I mean, when the chips are down, you know that people are going to dig in. And I was very lucky having Tom on board, because he's a very competent sailor. He was my relief skipper, and I could sleep soundly knowing that he was awake. It was fabulous to see Lindy develop as a sailor. I mean, she still says, as a non-sailor.
As a non-sailor, circumnavigator, sailed around the world.
Yeah. So that was amazing. And I think just how welcoming and friendly people are all around the world. And, some of these tiny remote Pacific islands where people have got nothing, but they want to give you everything. They want to share things with you. That was quite staggering and touching. And obviously get a pitch for Oyster. The boat, we never ever felt unsafe on Sea Flute. She looked after us amazingly well. She was capable of far more than we were. So yeah. And going back to the question everybody asked you, what was the worst storm you were in? Well, obviously the rally is organised, as you know, to make sure that we're following the favourable weather patterns around modern weather forecasting. Takes an awful lot of the gamble out of long sea passages, and we were in very strong, safe boats. So we did have some fairly spicy weather, but it's not a problem. And again, the comfort of knowing that there is always help, pretty close by, albeit sometimes you're hundreds of miles apart. You're only talking about 24 hours before somebody could get to you. So
it gives you that kind of reassurance. Like, I always remember I used to love the radio skeds each day. And so to benefit the people that are on the webinar, I'm not sure what you've done your rally, but on ours we'd have one in the morning and one in the evening, and it would be like a catch up on SSB, and the whole fleet would speak. You'd take turns to speak, and it was just fantastic. You are literally in the middle of nowhere, and you're speaking to your friends on the boat. They might be 200, 300, 400 miles away. It was incredible.
Paul, I should have added that to the list of things on your boat that you don't normally touch, because we never use the SSB. Tom drew the short straw, so he had to go and do the course.
Right.
I would strongly advocate everybody at least learns how to turn it on and tune it and select the right channels, because it's, as you say, it's worth its weight in gold once you're out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
We really looked forward to doing that. When you're on a long passage, you look forward to actually talking to everybody.
Yeah, it's almost like Zoom now in terms of during lockdown, in terms of speaking or just broadcasting out to the world. So fantastic. And so you guys have sold your lovely Oyster now. So what's next for you guys? Like, you sailed around the world. I think, Dave, didn't you do a big motorbike tour of South America?
We did, yeah, with some Oyster friends. To be honest, the next 12 months we pretty much got quite well mapped out with other excursions with Oyster Rally friends. But I've got to formally retire this year, because I'm still involved with my business. So I want to get that one, draw a line under that one. We're probably going to reorganize our house to have somewhere that is easier to lock up and leave. And then we need to buy another oyster and go sailing.
Fantastic. All right. Well, that's one's noted. You're about to be handed. So, it's official, guys. You see it there. There's only a few hundred people are going to hold you accountable for that. So, fantastic. Okay. Well, listen, David, Lindy, Tom, thank you so much for your time and for agreeing to come and speak to us this evening. It's absolutely fantastic. We wish you all the best in the world, and we honour you as circumnavigators, and also, we're looking forward to building you that beautiful oyster, obviously, as well, So, okay, great. So we're going to move on now, and we're going to go into a Q&A session. So if I could call back Ali, Millie, and Eddie to come onto the screens. There's Ali, great. There's Eddie and Millie. So in the chat box, guys, any questions you've got for anybody on the webinar here, we would love to take them and we will answer them. So let's have a look. Let's see what we've got. How old was Tom when he was on the rally? So Tom, that's one for you.
I would have been 26, 27?
26.
Yeah, 26 when we started.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. What else have we got in here? Right, yeah, good question. So clearly we've had a fair bit of technical issues with the webinar. Now, hopefully, fingers crossed, has also recorded. That's what they normally do. And so what will happen is you will get an email in 24 hours time. What we might do is just accelerate that timing, and you'll be able to watch the replay. And the replay shouldn't have any stop and starts in it. We shall see. So you should be able to watch this back without obviously the tech issues on there, hopefully. So yes, it will be available afterwards. Okay, so Peter, nice to see you there. So how long does the rally spend in the Galapagos? I'm going to hand that to Eddie, and whilst Eddie, you answer that, I'm going to see if I can sort out this video in the background for us.
Yeah, so we're due to be in the Galapagos. What I'll say is the support team should arrive in the Galapagos on the 28th of February 2022, and they will be there until the 17th of March 2022. Now, when I say support team arrives, you don't have to be there when they arrive. You can arrive afterwards, or you can leave after they've gone, or you can even arrive before them. It depends how long you want to stay at a specific location, but when you leave the last location. So this will all become very clear to you when we publish the timeline. It's all very clear on the new timeline, how long you can spend at each location, and how long it'll take you to get from that location to the next one at various average speeds. Paul?
Okay, fantastic. Okay, thanks, Eddie. The private guide in the Galapagos, Paul, I would have to come back to you on that. It's pretty expensive. It worked well for us because we're a big boat. And actually, David, you've got some great advice about this, about booking a trip on the local boats, which is what you guys did.
Yeah. Well, we obviously took that route, and I'm glad we did. It was for us, it was a lovely break and almost a sort of mini cruise. The boats are very comfortable. Typically, they have sort of 4 or 5 double cabins, so they're quite compact. And you have an onboard naturalist. The quality of the food is very, very good, and it's a very detailed itinerary. So they'll get you around to see all the best bits of the Galapagos. And obviously, you go to sleep at night, and they lift anchor and motor to the next place, and you wake up in the morning in a new location. So, from our experience, that was a really positive way of doing it.
But I think you need to think about that very early on and get it booked, because they do get booked up very, very early. Yeah,
I understand there are about 100 organised cruise ships who all have to fit a set itinerary. So you still can end up in an anchorage where there may only be 1 or 2 other boats, so you still get the whole feeling of solitude. But the prices range from, I think, from $3,000 up to $10,000 and more, depending on what sort of degree of luxury you want to experience. And you need to obviously make sure that you leave somebody on your boat. You're not allowed to leave a boat at anchor unoccupied. But what we did as a fleet, we organised to share crew, so that, as the owners or families went off to do their cruise, they could leave crew on a number of boats, sort of in close proximity. Just one other thing that I would mention is the Galapagos anchorage, the main anchorage, is quite rolly, and it's probably one of the rolliest anchorages we experienced on the whole rally. And if you can get there and get tucked in sort of fairly close to the shore, so that you can maybe get aligned properly with the swell and get a kedge out behind you. But you obviously need to make sure that you've got other yachts doing the same thing, so you don't end up swinging into the side of somebody else. But yeah, that was our experience.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, guys, for that. Robert asking, Oyster handles the permits in Galapagos. So Eddie and Ali, this is probably one for you guys.
Yes, we'll have arranged all of that before you even get there. I say everything has got to be applied for a minimum of 3 months in advance, along with the who's actually going to be on board. So you can arrive with fewer people than you said, but you can't arrive with more people than you said, because that will cause a real problem. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but everything is more or less taken care of for you. That's why I said earlier, it's often easier to arrive on, certainly on a World Rally boat, because everything's taken care of for you. Because if anybody can be bothered to look, actually, if you go on Noon's site and look up the Galapagos and the regulations for getting in, if that doesn't scare you, I'm not sure what else will, but you'll be spared all of that if you're taking part in the World Rally. As I said, arriving by air is a bit of a faff as well, because there's fees to pay before you leave for the Galapagos, because you've got to leave from, well, if you're leaving from Ecuador, which you have to do, and then there's more fees when you arrive. But if you have the choice of arriving by air, I would arrive, if you can, to San Cristobal, because the airport is on the same island, and you can almost actually walk from the airport to the anchorage. Whereas if you arrive on Santa Cruz, the airport's actually on another island, and you have to get a bus and a ferry, then another bus, and that is one real faff, I can tell you. So there we go. In short, it's all kind of arranged for you.
Much easier to sail in on a yacht. Exactly. Much easier to do it with Oyster.
But if you're picking up crew, if family or friends, it makes sense to fly into to Cristobal, because that's the first island you'll be checking into. Okay?
Sure.
And then even if you go all the way to Isabela, there's a small regional airport in Isabela, which you can fly either back to Baltra or to San Cristobal when you're flying back to the mainland. So you can only fly to the mainland from San Cristobal or Baltra on near Puerto Aora. Sorry, Paul.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks, Eddie. One from Liam in Dublin. Hi, Liam. So, hi, Paul. Can you clarify whether you need one or two extra people with the guide? So, I'm not sure about having the crew. You need a cabin for the guide, Eddie, isn't it? Which wasn't an issue on our boat. But is there a crew limit, number of people on board? I don't think there is there?
I don't think there is. I don't remember seeing a maximum number of crew. But you need at least one guide on board, because he's more or less there as a security guard to make sure you go to the right places. Sure. And he can tell you all about it anyway, because as you say, they're qualified naturalists and they know all about it. Yeah.
Okay. One from Michael. So how much better is diving than snorkeling? Worth acquiring a PADI license for Jan 22? So I would say definitely do your PADI.
Yeah.
Snorkeling is amazing. I mean, you can have some amazing experience. Snorkeling and diving is different, I guess, but it is just as amazing. That's probably the right answer, isn't it, guys? Unless you guys...
If you're going to go on the rally, 100% get your PADI before you go.
Yeah.
We kind of saw it as a diving holiday with a bit of sailing in between.
Yeah, okay, interesting. It is, and it's amazing because everywhere you go, they tell you it's the best diving in the world. We found that. You know, you'd arrive into Marquez or Fatalhiva. I mean, that is pretty amazing. You know, but there's all these, you know, this is the best diving in the world. You know, and it's but yeah, you have to dive. You know, that's for sure if you can, and if not, snorkeling is just as amazing too. So that's for Michael. For Patrick, so resupply, what's available in the Galapagos refuel reprovision? So fueling, Eddie, is a bit of a faff. Provisioning is not too bad. The problem is paying for it, from what I remember.
Well, you can provision most things. Okay, it's clearly it's going to be more expensive. Refueling is a real faff. Okay, it's so irritating. You could spend several days just waiting on the fuel to turn up, because they never turn up. I think, David, if you agree, they never turn up when they say they're going to turn up, and sometimes they don't even bring the right amount of fuel, which you have to pay for in advance. Okay, and it'll arrive in all sorts of shapes and forms of different kind of vessels, from jerry cans to whatever the guy found lying beside his house or whatever. You cannot go to the fuel station and buy it for yourself. You have to buy it through the agent, who will get his cousin to go and buy it from his brother's gas station or something like that. You know, that's kind of the way it works. But if you can, sail to Galapagos, and it's not, it's sailable. Save your fuel. Okay, you have generator hours. There's plenty of fuel in the Marquesas, so don't worry about that. Okay, but if you can possibly avoid the hassle and the wait time that you'll waste trying to refuel in the Galapagos, try and avoid that. Paul?
Okay, thanks, Eddie. One from Michael here. Heard boats visiting need a grey water system. Could you please elaborate? I think you're probably referring to the black water system and being able to lock, right, Eddie?
Yeah, black water system. I mean, all the oysters have got that anyway.
Sure.
We have grey water tanks. That's not going to be a problem. All that stuff is kind of inspected. And your boat is fumigated before you leave, which is part of the terms of arriving in Galapagos. Your boat is fumigated in Panama before you even leave. So all these certificates you'll already have on board. Paul?
Okay, fantastic. Here's one for the guys. What was the biggest fish you caught?
Ooh.
And what did you catch? There's lots of fish.
We got lots of fish, yeah. And I was just talking about provisioning. We over-provisioned almost on every ocean passage we did, and particularly you have to be careful leaving the Galapagos, because there's virtually nothing in the Marquesas, so you're almost provisioning all the way through to French Polynesia, where you magically turn up and there's a Carrefour supermarket, which is amazing. But we could have been self-sufficient on fish pretty much all the way through the Pacific. So we were catching regularly mahi-mahi, dorado, lovely tuna. But the biggest fish Tom can claim the credit for was a big marlin. And we caught how many marlin altogether?
Caught quite a few. We hooked lots of marlin.
So we landed one,
Yeah.
and that was the biggest. You know,
So we got a pretty big fish alongside the boat. Managed to unhook it and let him go.
Yeah.
But the fishing was incredible. And again, even if you're not a fisherman, just make sure you got a couple of great trawling rods and some lures.
And lots of lures.
Oh yeah, amazing.
Lots because they take those lures.
Yeah.
The amount of little lures you kind of stock up, and then before you know it, you're 2 or 3 days into an ocean trip, and whoomp, you're out of fishing it. You know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
we learned that pretty quick.
Yeah.
You know, that's for sure. So James is asking, is it worth having a dive compressor on board?
Well, we had a dive compressor, and I'm glad we did, because it obviously made us very self-sufficient, particularly some of the remote islands in the Pacific where the diving was spectacular, and Indonesia as well is not well catered for in terms of dive shops and places to refill bottles. So I would strongly advocate if your divers have a dive compressor on board. The caveat, it obviously takes up an awful lot of space in the lazarette, so that's the trade-off really. And you do end up filling everyone else's dive bottles as well.
Yeah.
Sure. That's absolutely true. Exactly. Okay. And any preference over having electric or gas?
Ooh. Well, Sea Flute was an all-electric boat.
Mm-hmm.
And I must admit, I was concerned that might have been a problem. But I'm so glad we weren't reliant on gas, seeing all these poor souls all around the world going off to opposite sides of the island trying to get gas bottles filled. We were absolutely fine with just electric. A few of the guys actually had plug-in induction hobs that they actually put on top of their gas cookers as well, which worked very well. So that's a sort of halfway option.
Yeah. So I mean, we definitely both the oysters that I skippered had electric, and I wouldn't go gas. Just exactly that. You know, you have to go and get the different, to get the refills or the different regulators, and then all of that. And you've got quite good redundancy that actually, if your generator does fail, then your inverter will, heat a kettle, it'll run a microwave, so you can still make hot food. So whilst you fix your genset, so it's pretty.
The only downside I could say was if you needed to cook at night, obviously you'd have to run the generator.
Sure.
But I mean, for hot drinks and things, we used to just fill up we had a sort of giant thermos flask, which would keep all the watch keepers in hot drinks all through the night without any problem. So, yeah, I would definitely say go electric if you've got a choice.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. Let's have a look. What other questions we got there? From Nick, what sort of wind speeds did you need to sail rather than motor? What sort of wind speeds do you need to sail rather than motor? So what I would say, it depends on the yacht. So I'll hand that one to David for the 56. Okay. So where would you switch the engine on, I guess?
Okay. Well, that's not a straightforward question, as you know, Paul. There are
that's why I passed it.
An awful lot of variables.
I can take it back, no problem.
How much diesel have you got left, and how far have you still got to go?
Absolutely true.
What sort of sea state you're in, because that obviously has a huge bearing. You obviously don't want too much wind. We could sail, obviously what point of sail you're on as well. If you're going to windward, we would be looking to turn the engine off at 10 knots, maybe a little bit less if we were short of fuel. We had a parasailer, which worked out fantastically well for us. So downwind, we could carry the parasailer down to about 6 knots of wind on a slight sea state. But the sweet spot, I mean, there are big, heavy boats, you know, we were full of spares and provisions. So if you had 15 knots of wind, you knew you'd be sailing quite nicely.
Yeah. Okay. It's similar on Lush as well.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, exactly. And you kind of, well, certainly we found that you get very good at motor sailing. So we would get her that she, you know, as long as you had, you know, just over 4 knots true of wind, you could just motor her, and she was burning about 1.5 litres an hour, and she'd do 7 knots. So you know, you got very good at wind angles and just getting going just on your head sail and making your own wind and using the apparent. Any more questions, guys, for the guides? We'll be wrapping up soon. So any more questions? Just pop them in the chat box there. Whilst we're waiting for more questions, what I'll do is if I just move on the slides, so we're at the Galapagos. We're going to run another one of these webinars probably in about a month's time, isn't that right, Ali? Something like that. So we're here in the Galapagos, and our next webinar will be on cruising French Polynesia. So look out for that. Now, in terms of somebody who was interested in doing the Oyster World Rally, Ali, what do they need to do to express their interest?
Well, Paul, we've been absolutely inundated with people wanting to sail on the Oyster World Rally since we've been doing our webinars, which is amazing. And, you know, basically unprecedented demand that we've never had before. So at this moment in time, we are full for the next rally and starting January 2022. However, we do have a waiting list. And if you're interested in being on that, then just send me a quick email and I can then let you know all the details about that. And I'll put my email address into the chat room in a moment. So please drop me an email and I can let you know. But if you do want to know more about the rally and want the event information pack, then it is attached to the actual webinar and you can grab that at the end.
Okay, thanks, Ali. I see a question there from Liam. If you only had room for one downwind sail, asymmetric or parasail? So, David, what would you go for?
I would go for the parasail.
You'd go for the parasail?
Well, I mean, there were lots of times when we were sailing almost dead downwind with the parasail out, whereas the asymmetric you could only probably carry down to sort of 150-ish, I would think. And the other great thing about the parasail is that if you're in a slightly rolly sea, whereas the asymmetric would actually flog, the parasail is very, very stable. So it was a lot more restful to sail with that.
Okay, fantastic. Eddie, how about you?
Well, I kind of like the MPS or the multi-purpose spinnaker. I think it's or A-sail if you like. I think they're more versatile. You can put the A-sail on your pole if you want. You just transfer the tack from the bow up to the pole, and you can use it like as you would a normal spinnaker. You're not going to be jibing it every half a mile or anything, so it could be up there for several days. I mean, I once flew a spinnaker for 8 days continuously across the Atlantic, and that was an MPS. So, yeah, horses for courses. I wouldn't say much against the parasail. I've sailed with them, I've raced with them. They weren't that convenient for racing, I've got to say, but
no, definitely not.
No.
So I think the most versatile sail is the MPS, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks, guys.
There would be a very strong argument for not carrying any coloured sails on the rally at all, because the most of the downwind sailing we did with a pulled out genoa.
Yeah.
And I guess if you've only got a little a tiny jib, then that's not going to be an option. But it was by far the simplest, safest, most versatile sail plan that we used. Just pulled out genoa, mainsail, jibe preventer, and the staysail.
Absolutely agree, and same on Lush. You know, we sail thousands and thousands of miles with the pole up,
Yeah.
with the poled out blade, and she sailed beautifully. I think on the slightly newer models, you could consider code 0. So I was sailing the 565 with one in Barcelona at the end of last year, and she sails beautifully. And what was amazing is in very light airs that you can sail really quite deep downwind, but still have the apparent on the beam. So I think, you know, I haven't put a code 0 on a 56 or anything like that. I'm not sure it would work that well, but you know, there are different options. But I totally agree with you, David. Is actually coloured sail is, you know, yeah. I mean, it's stowage space on board, and you will spend a lot of time with a poled out Yankee and stay.
Well, the other thing is, you know, in lighter airs, that an A sail can double your speed in lighter airs. And if you've got a long way to go, you don't want to be wasting diesel when you could be sailing, you know. So.
Sure, absolutely. There's a question for you, Tom, which was, what was your favourite toy on the rally?
Favorite toy?
Yeah, so I'm assuming it's a drone or something like that, or maybe not. It could be a.
Well, it was probably the drone until it had a swim. Yeah, that was always good to get a few shots with that.
Yeah, fair enough. No problem. All right. Okay. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. So just to say a massive thank you to David, Lindy, and Tom. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on and broadcast to the world about your Oyster World Rally experience. Thank you to Eddie, Ali, and Millie, the team. We are all going to turn our cameras off now and our mute, and I'm going to try and play you this video. If it doesn't work, what I'm going to do, I'm going to drop the link to the video on YouTube. So I've uploaded it to YouTube in the meantime whilst we've been talking, and it's well worth a watch. Tom made this amazing video, so hopefully I can get it to play now for you. If not, follow the link. You'll be able to watch it there. We'll put it in and we'll get it over to you. And just to say thank you so much for joining us, and keep an eye out. The next webinar will be in a month's time, and we'll be talking about cruising French Polynesia. So fair winds. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much to everybody on board, and we will see you very, very soon. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Right, let's see if we can get this video working for you. So guys, just to say thank you so much for joining us. I don't think the video works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the link in the chat box here. If you link to that link, that will take you to see Tom's video that is just amazing. So I recommend you to have a look at that. And thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you in a month's time. So fair winds, sail safe. And we will see you very, very soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.